Welcome to Follow Me to the MROP, a podcast dedicated to the journey of the masculine soul and the transformative power of initiation. My name is Brian Mueller. I live in suburban Dayton, Ohio, and I made my rites at Pilgrim Park in Illinois in 2014. I'm your host, and in each episode of our show, I'll sit down with one man who has made his rites, and I'll invite him to tell his story. This won't be an abstract explanation or a theological lecture, just a real conversation about what it was like to cross that threshold at the rites and what changed afterward. Before we begin, a quick word of gratitude. This podcast is brought to you by Choosing Presence. We believe that the greatest gift a man can give his community is his own presence. In a world of constant distraction, Choosing Presence provides the tools to help you stay grounded in the now. If you'd like an easy way to begin learning about the practice of presence, you can download the free Practicing Presence app at choosingpresence.org/app. Now, the Men's Rites of Passage, or MROP, is an experience designed to help men move from the first half of life into the second, shifting from a focus on ego and achievement to a life of meaning and soul. On this show, we just don't talk about the rites in theory, we talk to the men who have walked the path. Today, we are joined by a man who has made his rites, and we're going to hear exactly what that journey looked like for him. My guest today is Mark Eggenschwiller. Brother, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for making the time and for being willing to share your story.
Good to be with you.
Mark, tell us where you're from and how you spend your time these days.
I'm from Dayton, Ohio. I spend my time, of course, working, and I love outside. I love to hike. I love to fish. I love to play around in my garden. I love to kayak, and I really enjoy spending time with my beautiful wife, Kate.
Now let's dive in and talk about the Men's Rites of Passage. The MROP is a unique experience. It's not a retreat or a workshop. It's an initiation. Many men arrive at the rites at a crossroads in their lives, looking for something they can't quite name. Before we dive into the why and the how, let's start at the very beginning. When and where did you make your rites?
I made my rites a couple years ago at Aravaipa Canyon in Arizona.
So that was 2024?
2024.
So when you think back to that weekend, what's the first image or feeling that comes to mind?
Oh, well, you were part of it. You were a greeter. I was walking up to the home where they were hosting us, and I looked at you, and something caught my eye. I looked up, and there was a hawk flying with a snake in its talons across the sky, and that was the beginning of a very powerful mystical experience for me. I'm still trying to understand what the universe was saying to me when I saw that beautiful sight, but that was the first thing that hit me.
That was quite amazing, yeah, that image. So in general terms, what was the weekend like for you?
Transformative. I would say life-changing in some ways. I got to a place of knowing and understanding in my inner self that I hadn't ever got to before. So it was very powerful.
Who was the weaver or the primary guide for the rites, and about how many men would you guess were at the rites?
Giovanni, very passionate, really wonderful, warm, inviting presence. And what was your other question? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. How many men do you think were there with you?
Oh, 25 to 30.
Now, without sharing anything that you'd consider confidential, were there any moments that really stood out to you?
I don't remember what we called it, but when we did that walkthrough and we talked about our core wound, that really stands out. And then the time of solitude, that was really powerful.
So that was the part of the rites that impacted you most strongly, probably.
I would say, yeah, from a kind of an event status. I mean, looking back, one of the greatest privileges and most meaningful parts was sharing it with the other men in my counsel.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I do think it's really important that this is a communal, a shared experience. So is there a particular interaction that you had with one other man or a group of men that kind of captures what the rites meant to you?
Well, I think it's just integrally, doing that with brothers. I mean, when we do the shadow work and we take those deep dives, we go to a place, or I did, that was, wow, how would I call it? It's a sacred space inside, very intimate, very vulnerable. It's this place where I'm exploring my finite. I guess Thomas Merton would call it what my small self or my I don't remember. Just it going there and just getting to know myself that way. It was just really powerful. So getting to do that with other men who were doing that, there was a common bond. There was a common stream that we were all drinking from. It was just a really profound, powerful, unifying, communal, intimate experience of exploring our wound together and supporting one another and being with one another. As you know, one of the things that many of us often struggle with is that sense of being alone, that sense of being not known, that fear of being irrelevant. So, we carry that kind of awareness and in part identity into a, a setting like that, and we share that with other men, and it's a deep, deep bond that I still carry, and I'm so grateful to not be to have had men to accompany me, beautiful men, open men, men from across the spectrum of age and profession and geography and spirituality, but there was just something very, very powerful and wonderful that was built there.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That's really well said. Is there a man or a group of men that you keep in touch with from the rites experience?
Not from that group. We tried for a few months after, maybe 6 months. But so no, I have seen a couple of the guys at the Awaken. So, it was always wonderful to bump back into them. But it didn't result in developing uh, any more community than, we really hit our apex at the MROP.
So let's go back to what led you to participate in the rites. Were there any circumstances in your life at that time that kind of said, yes, this is the moment, or this is why I want to do a rites at this time?
Well, honestly, Brian, one of the things that led me to participate was that I didn't want to participate. So I don't know if you've ever been there, but sometimes when there's that thing you're shrinking back from, it's an indication that it's time to lean in. So there was that, and I knew there was, in my inner work, in my spiritual journey, there was a longing, and I sensed that this was a pretty clear milestone that was going to be on my path.
Is there a particular, was there something that you were hoping for to get from the rites, or something that you were fearing as you headed into that experience?
That's a great question. I think there there were things that I was hoping for, but I don't remember if it was some of the discussion and dialogue and communication that came beforehand. But part of what I think made it a positive experience for me was to try and lay down an expectation that I had to go in and I had to have this really mind bending experience, or that I had to try and make something happen or cure myself or stumble onto some kind of silver bullet that was gonna lead me to some kind of awareness that I'd never been to before. So I think really for me leading up, was to kind of assuage as much of that expectation and of course live with the uncertainty about what to expect because I knew that it was such a powerful experience for so many men. For some reason, it makes me think of the first time I went to the circus. And you hear people talk about going to the circus and the elephants and all of the activity, and you're just like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be amazing." I mean, it didn't disappoint when I went there, but, I think it was that kind of level of expectation and leaning in that I wanted to try and, maybe just tamp down a little bit because I wanted to come to whatever was gonna come. I wanted to be open, I wanted to be available, but I didn't want to have an expectation or of the event or of myself to try and lean into and shape. So that's kind of how I went into it.
Yeah, we should let the listeners know that this was not your introductory point to Illumin, that you had been involved for years, coming to some of the national gatherings involved locally here in Ohio. So you had some context from experience and from knowing other men.
Yes, for sure. And several of those men were there, so it was really wonderful to be in that big space with them.
When the rites, it's a 4-night, 5-day experience. You were at Aravaipa Canyon, which I always say is like one of the Mecca places for Illumin, just a beautiful, beautiful area in which to hold the rites and to experience that. But when the event ended and began your reentry into everyday life, how'd you feel?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to some of the advice that I got that was super helpful because any other time I'd been through a multi-day immersive, very spiritual, very emotional experience like that, I always looked to try and process it. What am I going to say to somebody that about what this meant? And the advice that was super helpful was try not to capture all that in your first 6, 7, 8 days after. There's so much that is bouncing around in your soul. It's going to take a little while for you to really process that, let the dust settle, and understand what it was. So I think I was intentional about not trying to put words on it or to really assess. But I would say after that, the thing that I carried most was that deep awareness that I gained about what my core wound was, which, I, I don't mind sharing. It was, you're not enough. You must perform. So from, processing things in my childhood and the imprints that I got from my father and from my early social development in junior high and high school and the peer groups that I was really trying to roll with and early romantic relationships and, the very formative parts of my religious development, all of that brought me to be the man that I was when I walked in and the wound that I carried and being really powerfully invited into that space to safely explore and understand it and gave me a level of self-awareness that continues to be a deep part of what I carry and understand as my spiritual journey today. It really has, I would say, been contextualized. I think, I think at some stage in my life, my wound really defined me. It was the lens that I looked through in the way I pursued my career and in the way that I functioned in intimate relationships and in the way I kind of looked over my shoulder all the time about what I felt like I needed to do to be acceptable and to earn affection and to do all of that. So I think as I've grown into my higher self, my infinite self, my God self, some of the archetype that we, really explored and tried to understand, I have found that wound helped me to really understand how major parts of my identity were formed, but I've also been able to also be so much more aware of the parts of me that are pure love that aren't defined by that wound. And so I would say it was definitely a fork in the road for me in terms of moving towards a more healing and whole self.
Thank you so much for that. That's really great. Let's talk a little bit about the people in your life. So I want to know, and I'd like our listeners to hear, how did your family, friends, and, your community, the community around you respond to your decision to participate in the men's rights?
Well, the people that don't know Illumin were like, you know, what are you doing? Are you going into some kind of cult and run around naked in the woods and paint yourself and cut yourself and take ayahuasca or whatever that stuff is? So there was a lot of mystique and mystery about it for many. For those who, my brothers in Illumin, it was, they were thrilled and very encouraging. It was, it just brought some of the fundamental elements of our brotherhood really together with me. My wife was probably the most interesting one because she was aware of my work with Illumin, but there was always kind of a dynamic in my relationship with my wife because she has struggled with some physical symptoms that made her able to be less active, and I continue to be very active. We had to, we had, over the past years have had these discussions about how we do life together. So when she saw me leaning into this really powerful thing that she didn't really understand because of the dynamics in our relationship, I think she was a little apprehensive about what I was getting into because she didn't understand it. And there was already kind of an ongoing dynamic of, just wanting to try and map out what intimacy together looked like. We just, in the past several years become empty nesters. So that was an interesting thing, but it was part of an overall development and evolution of our relationship. So it was, across the board experiences with lots of different folks.
Yeah. Did any of those conversations change after you participated in the rites, or?
Well, with my wife, it certainly, as she began to understand my my shadow work, which she was well aware of, we share our most intimate selves with one another. I think she saw what a great experience it was for me. But I will say this, Brian. I came into our marriage with some unhealthy dependencies. And I've heard a marriage counselor say that the thing that makes marriage successful it isn't your ability to just have these rousing advances in the quality of your relationship, but it's often more about what you do with the things that aren't going to change. So I think as we got to a place where there was a realization that, you know, I was going to continue to pursue this path and it was really good and healthy for me. And Kate began to see how positive it was. I think that she really became a fan. But the thing that was part of this was my own autonomy and my own independence and my own agency in the relationship that this was part of. So, again, it was part of the overall evolution of our relationship, but it was certainly a place where we both began to recognize the need for our autonomy, our agency, the value to the relationship for two independent, creative folks to really be intimate. So it's funny because, we had this image that intimacy was you do everything together and maybe have unhealthy dependencies and you're triggered by each other's fear. And there were dynamics in our relationship that we didn't fully understand. So walking through this brought some of those to the fore, but it also gave us clarity about some things we needed to develop into as a couple. So long answer there, but that's kind of how it panned out from that perspective.
That's wonderful. No, I appreciate that. How has your understanding of masculinity, initiation, and sort of the male journey changed?
Yeah, well, I kind of grew up with what maybe you'd call toxic masculinity. It was classic me Tarzan, you Jane kind of thing. Not to be too crude, but the first time somebody got laid in high school, it was this, epoch of, that somebody had arrived at. So it was, sexual conquest and physical dominance, and certainly a lot of identifying. Part of what came into my religious faith was an us and them perspective. So there was a lot of what I would describe as toxic masculinity. And certainly one of the biggest beautiful things about my experience in Illumin has been to understand what it truly means to have intimate relationships with other men, and what true masculinity means. I have 3 gay kids, and I have come to believe that my highest calling in life is love. And there's a lot about toxic masculinity that requires a man to be above, and look down upon, and to be stronger than. And I think true masculinity is certainly understanding and exploring what it means to be a man, but to couch that against this concept of love. And that's just where I kind of unpack things at.
So I just have one more question for you, Mark, and that's what counsel would you offer a man who is discerning whether or not to participate in the rites this year?
I go back to my first point was, if you don't want to do it, then maybe you need to do it. Talk to other men who've been through it and understand their process, which I guess is part of the purpose of these podcasts. And have the courage to take a deep dive and look inside, because no one is going to heal us from the outside. Our healing is going to come as we explore our pain and our wounds, and our process is really about being willing to go there, and to be able to do that, to go there together with other safe men. It's I don't have any other. I have intimate friendships where I go that with individuals, but to do that with a group it's been really powerful and cathartic. And I would say definitely, if you don't have a level of community like that you experience, then that would be another one. I mean, I think some of us are reluctant to go in and experience community for whatever reason. So I would say, yeah, go for it, and grow and confront the fears. I heard somebody say one time, there's 2 things you can do with fear. You can run towards it, or you can run away from it. So run, baby, run, because it's good stuff out there.
Brother, thank you. Really, truly, I love you, brother, and I really appreciate your honesty, your courage, and you giving us a really vulnerable window into your experience at the MROP and even outside it. So thank you.
Yeah. Good to be here. Thank you, Brian.
For those listening who are now feeling a tug in their own soul and are curious to learn more, allow me to share a bit about the history of these rites. The men's rites of passage was originally developed by Father Richard Rohr and was first offered at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico in 1996. While it was supported for many years by the Center for Action and Contemplation, since 2012, Illumin has been the steward of this work, preserving and adapting the rites for men all over the world. To learn more about the history and the theology behind this work, I highly recommend reading Adam's Return by Richard Rohr. If you are ready to make your rites, there are 4 opportunities in the United States and another in the United Kingdom in 2026. The first is in Northern California, May 13th through the 17th. The second in the United Kingdom, July 22nd through the 26th. And in Illinois, August 12th through the 16th. There's one on the East Coast in New Jersey, September 16th through the 20th. And the final one of the year is in Texas, which is in MROP and Umbrales, our Spanish language rites, September 30th through October 4th. You can find details and registration information at illumin.org/MROP or illumin.org/events. Additionally, mark your calendars for Awaken, the annual national gathering of Omen, taking place November 5th through the 8th in New Mexico. You can find more at illumin.org/awaken. Finally, a special thank you to our sponsor, Choosing Presence. If today's conversation moved you, I encourage you to bring more intentionality into your daily life. Download the Practicing Presence app for free at choosingpresence.org/app. It's a simple but profound way to stay connected to the journey we've discussed today. Thank you for listening to Follow Me to the MROP. Until next time, brothers, stay present.